Going live, going live, live. Alrighty then. This is the most wonderful, ridiculous, silly prop. It's sent to me quite a few years ago by a very wonderful guy who spent a lot of his formative years in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. Not that that's meant to consider a negative or a positive thing, just maybe a colorful thing. And you know what? Once more for Bay Ridge. Apparently Vikings invented Bay Ridge. I was told the other day that Freddie, my goodness, good morning. You're up early. Congratulations. Welcome. I was told by a very knowledgeable and experienced tech person in the world of streaming that when a show starts, people aren't necessarily always there. And I said, they're not? Because of course, video, I don't know if you're there. And he said, well, you can tell if they're there. There's a thing right on the top of the screen. It's over there. And I said, oh, look at that. So today is video 88. And see you later, Mom. Today is video 88. And it's exciting for me because in spite of a very interesting September so far, we have managed to persevere. I think we missed one video. I didn't realize that I had lost my camera feed, so I didn't post it over here. And so aside from that, we've been going twice a week, every week, so that I could feel that if I was promising you something, I was actually delivering. I've also done it because I want to get gooder at it. I want to feel comfortable in this space because there's so much that we're going to do together. And before you get in anybody's boat, you want to make sure that they know how to steer and that they've got good navigation skills and they have the faintest idea where they're going. And since that would be me, I felt the least I could do was practice to make this work. And my followers, my viewers, and my tech people are all saying it's getting smoother, it's getting clearer, it's getting more interesting. And you're still telling the same stories. And a friend of mine on Tuesday after the video said, it's an interesting combination. He said, I haven't seen anybody do this before because you're funny. And at the same time, there's a whole lot of therapy going on. And I said, well, isn't that a mom? And he said, yes, it is. It certainly is. It certainly is the Abby version of mom, that's for sure. So it's a real hybrid thing that we're creating here. And I think that's important. I think that the ways that we have been doing things are great. What we need, though, is every so often a refresh. Every so often, unplug it and plug it back in again and see if it's working better. Before I get into anything significant today, I want to take a moment and send all of the hang on, keep taking the deep breaths, you'll get there wishes and energies to the people smack dab in the path of the current storm, working its way up through Florida and heading for the southern other states above it. It's a mess. And it's funny when you think about it. At some point in time, we have all experienced a really terrible storm of some kind. I went through the ice storm in Canada, the ice storm of 1998. Everywhere it lasted a week where I was because the power went out in the middle of a repair. I was without power for 6 weeks. And I discovered why pioneer women died young. It's because they quit. Check, please. I think they all periodically said in those days. And so when I think of it was only 6 weeks and it felt like forever and it felt uphill and it felt draining and it felt like no fun and it felt all the things that make it very difficult to lean in and say, okay, all right, back at it. Let's do this. It's very difficult to get into that headspace and to get into that energy when it feels like no matter what we do, um, things don't seem to be working. There's an old saying, the hurrieder I go, the behinder I get. And what is worse than that, I think, is that no matter how hard I tackle it, it doesn't seem to move. It doesn't seem to change. It doesn't seem to improve. That's debilitating. And for so many of us, for every single person that I have interviewed for this Pivotry in Motion series, it has been that. It has been, this is awful. This is not okay. This is not working. This is, I can't imagine myself living this way forever and ever and a day. Every single person I spoke to said that they had found themselves in a place where they hit a wall. And they simply said, nope, I'm fixing it. I'm doing what I have to do. I'm fixing it. And they did. Every single one of you, if you're watching right now. And when you eventually see the book collection, you're going to realize how honored I am and all these other viewers are that you shared your stories with me, because they are going to teach us how we can change for the better, for the long haul. It's amazing. And I know, although it's annoying to hear, that we have to have gone through something wretched in order to have this. Freddie, who dares to disturb this video? My phone just rang. Right, Freddie? Who are these people? Or they think they have lives or something? Did you notice what I did? I answered it and turned it off. There. Nope. Every single one of the stories is about exactly that, saying, no, I'm not putting up with that. I'm not handling that anymore. I did my best. It's not working. I'm going to do something else. I'm going to do just enough of this to look at it this way and go, oh, look, there's the solution right there. Why didn't I do that sooner? And so our discussions are all about the stories that I can share with you that make you feel that we're exactly the same. We're going through the same stuff, just different illustrations of it, but it's all the same stuff. And we are finding ways to work through it with grace under pressure. We're not jumping down into the low energy and the yelling and the fear and the anger and the frustration and the rage, because that doesn't get us anywhere. The small yappy dog syndrome accomplishes nothing, except everybody wants to stay away from the small yappy dog. We don't get the good attention and we don't get the good intention if we're snarling and ranting and yapping and the freedom to swing our fist extending to somebody else's nose. We owe it to ourselves, first of all, to say, I'm going to put a good spin on this. They should know your schedule by now, 10 a.m. That's right, Freddie. My press release guy. They should know the routine by now. It's 88 videos. What is wrong with these people? Can you imagine that they didn't know? Those poor, poor souls lost, drifting in the wilderness. So I want to tell you a story. I want to start today with a story that was one of those double blink moments, and it still makes me laugh to this day. Before I tell the story, now what was that? Oh, it's a message. So before I tell that story, I'm just going to click that off so that doesn't happen again. Yeah, okay. Before I tell the story, I want to say a couple of things. I want to say welcome. I want to say happy Thursday. I want to say, if you are challenged, if you are having an uphill time, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're here because this is the interrupt. This is, as Freddie says, no one should dare to disturb the video. This is our time, yours and mine. When we talk about stuff that's about us, when we talk about things that make us feel great because we're talking about them together. I've talked a lot about falling sideways, backwards, and upside down into the role of mom on You Can't Do That on Television. And the funny irony that although the producer was given a good solid hint by my brilliant, talented friend, Carol Hay, who was coaching the kids, and said to Roger, you really need to meet Abby. I think she's perfect to take on the job. So he, on the strength of that, he met me for lunch. What really impressed him more than anything was the car I was driving. I was driving a Willys, no, not a Willys. I was driving an old Volkswagen Thing, which was a battered together tin can version of a Jeep. But during the war, during World War II, the Volkswagen Thing was used as a German troop Jeep, and Roger had seen many of them and was kind of fixated on them because he was in England, and Germany and England having their issues. So when he met me, when I pulled up in front of the studio and I'm driving a Volkswagen Thing, you can imagine it was like a gazang right back into history. And he said, where did you get this? Because from his perspective, this is the car that he fixates on, and why am I driving it? That kind of thing, you know. And anyway, all the way through the meeting, all the way through the lunch, all the way through the driving there and back, all he talked about was that car and his experience during the war, and all the ways that shaped him and inspired him to do the work that he does with kids. And so there was a connection. But the only connection it had to do with me is that I owned the car, and I was the one sitting in front of him when he was telling the story. We get back to the studio, and he said, well, thank you. I had a very nice lunch. I have to go now. And I said, yes, but you're sitting in my car. You're driving it, but it's my car. What? Oh, yes. And he starts to get out, and I said, can I ask about the audition? Audition for what? Oh, nothing. And so I said, the show you're producing? Oh, that. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Do you smoke? No. Oh, all right. You're hired. Show up next week. We'll call you. And he walked away. And I sat there in the car thinking, well, I don't know what that was just now. And I don't know what it means, but I'm sure I'll find out next week. So that was the first time I met him. And it was cemented in my head that Roger and I would always be having a conversation that was just not quite exactly coinciding. Near, close. Oh, close. Wow. But, and one of the reasons was that I wasn't a kid, and his creative focus was children. So what would strike him, what would get his attention, his immediate attention, was if I said something funny, and I have a certain element of British sensibility in the humor, and of course he does too. And so there, if I did something funny, quite often, it really hit him hard because it was of a similar style to his. And sometimes they were irreverent, and he would laugh at what I was getting away with and saying, yeah, do it. So that's the long lead up to this story. We did You Can't Go on television for many years, and we had a huge following, and many of you are watching, and you've become my friends, and I'm very, very grateful for that. One day, we heard a rumor that we might not be coming back, that the season as it ended might be the end. And there were reasons for that. It wasn't that the show wasn't popular. The show was huge everywhere. It was a decision being made by the license holder whether or not they would renew our license. And we could have gone somewhere else to someone else. Well, good morning. Good morning, Billy. What did you miss? You missed somebody phoning. Phone rang. So I clicked on and then off, and Freddie said, who dares to disturb you? Don't they know that this is the video hour? So that's basically it. And I'm leading into I just told the story of Roger and I and my car, the Volkswagen thing, and I'm leading into the pivot that changed everything, that is changing everything. So we heard this rumor that the show was not going to be renewed by Nickelodeon, that they were considering not renewing the license. We could have gone somewhere else. It wasn't as though that meant we would never do the show again. It just, in the interim, for this immediate moment, everything might be on hold. And on the strength of that, I put together a series of sketches that I had written in my spare time at home, nothing to do with the show, that were based on the kind of entertainment that I had seen Lily Tomlin perform on stage. And what fascinated me about the way she chose to do her material, she and her writer partner, is that sometimes she would just walk out on stage and talk to you about something. Kind of the way these videos are, just walking out here, sitting down in my office and saying, how you doing? Today I want to talk about this. So she would do bits like that. And then the other ones that fascinated me the most were characters that she created specifically to create a story thread. So she had the little girl, Edith Ann, sitting in the oversized rocking chair. And that allowed Lily to tell stories from the point of view of a little girl in a world where everything was oversized and too big, and she was kind of held hostage to it. And her point of view was very specific. The other one that everybody loved was the telephone operator, one Ringy Dingy. And we loved her because she was opinionated and normally invisible, because nobody ever saw the real live telephone operators in the old days. It was just a voice that you heard. So it was an opportunity for us to see her and her facial expressions as she had opinions about the people that she heard and the things going on in the world. And by doing characters, it allowed Lily to say different things to you from different places and different points of view. And I mean, it's pivotry. It's pivotry in motion, precisely. And I had seen the show live, and I was transfixed. I was sitting in the audience. I was so locked on it that when there was an intermission, I just sat there. And the person who had invited me said, "Are you coming out to the lobby?" And I said, "You know what? I'm going to do that. I can do that." And that's when I started writing the sketches. I didn't have a title for it. I just wrote the sketches. And some of them were serious, and some of them were funny, and some were we just walking out on stage and talking to the audience. Exactly the same premise, the same concept. And I had quite a few collected by by the time that we heard the rumor that the show might not be back. So I was sitting at home and I said to myself, well, now what? I am so typecast. I am so overcast in this reality. I have to figure out a way to remind people who else I am, other than mom or the librarian or Aunt Pookie. I have to go past that. And I'm never going to get that reach. At the time, I said I'm never going to get that reach because the internet was really in its infancy. And as far as I was concerned, it didn't even exist. And so we were always looking at live or television or radio, and that was the extent of it. And I thought, well, I guess I'll just go back and start over again. I'll do a reboot. I'll find a stage, I'll find a festival somewhere, and I will do this collection of characters, and I will invite all the critics to come and see me. And in fact, I wrote all the critics a letter, and I said, I bet you've been wondering what I've been up to for the last 10 years. While I was over there doing that, why don't you come and find out? And they did. All the critics all came to the opening show. That never happens, but I had made them curious because in fact, they hadn't seen me do anything for 10 years. So because I felt the show was going to end, and because all the sketches were me, Abby, writing, and all of my stories tend to have a bit of a punch to them, I thought, I'm calling it gloves off. I'm calling it, on the surface level, no more of this. She's gone. Also, you know what happens when people take their gloves off? They're ready for a fight. And I thought, this title says everything about who I am, what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and what people can come to expect. And what they're going to expect is a massive pivot. So I did that. And all kinds of people came. And praise all the gods, the critics loved it. Yay, because they could have all just got together and hated it as a thing, and they didn't. And they all said amazing things on radio and television, and they wrote about it. And so people were coming. It was sold out. And one day, someone brought Roger. I hadn't mentioned it to him. I was busy, and we were shooting the show. Someone bought Roger. And right before the show, said to me, Roger's here. Really? Wow. Okay. Awesome. I had gone past the fear moments when who's in the audience, because the show was going so well and I was having such a good time that the ideas were working, that people were liking the characters I'd created, and they were liking the content that I'd written and so on. So I went out and I did the show, and it was, and people laughed at the funny stuff, and they sat silent at the sad, tragic stuff, and they kind of muttered and mumbled and replied to me the way you do here. When I said something and asked a question, I would get the audience answering me back. It was wonderful. And at the end of the show, there were all these people, as is usual at a live show. And, hugs and thanks and see you next time. And I'm bringing people, I'm coming back. I'm bringing, thank you. And then all of a sudden there was Roger. And I said, well, hello, Roger. What did you think? And he said the best line ever. Best ever. He said, how long have you been able to do this? And I said, what? Write? Act? Produce? And he said, no, but I had no idea you could do this. And I said, well, what the hell did you think I was doing on the show? And he said, yes, obviously you were acting. We have to do something about, I apologize. We're going to do something about this. And I said, "Oh, good. Does it involve money?" And he said, "What? What? Yes, of course it involves money." And so me, it involves money, Roger. So he then went to bat for me. He went and talked to the powers that be and said, "We need to do a half hour. We need to give Abby a forum. She's put up with so much and all these children and me ignoring her. And I had no idea. And it's a great show. So we need to do this." And bless his heart, he was my executive producer. And the thing was that the crew who did the live studio audience, we did a live studio audience recording of the show of Gloves Off. And we shortened it down so that it fit into a half hour format. And but the thing is that all the people working on it expected that, not this. And so they were not in a place to see the power of it or see the humor in it or recognize the possibilities with it. Like the fellow who was organizing the audiences said, "We get a lot of women in here." And I said, "You don't need to get a lot of women in here. What is wrong with you?" And he said, "Well, women will get the humor." And I said, "Of course they will. It's the men we want in the audience. It's the men we want to convert." And he said, "Really?" "Yes. Yes, I'm not a feminist. I'm an equalist. I want everybody to have an aha moment. I want everybody to laugh until they have to say, 'Excuse me, I need to go to the other room.'" And they didn't understand, any of them, in our conversations and getting ready to do the production for television, that I had showed up every day at the studio to play mom as a character. They had not even remotely considered that I was reaching to do her. They thought the librarian was funny, but they thought that mom was really me. and I said at one point to somebody who was, getting ready to do this show with me, you understand that if I was really mom, I wouldn't be allowed to operate machinery. I wouldn't be able to pay rent. I mean, she's incapable. Yeah. Yeah, I guess. Never really thought about it. I just thought that was you. And one of the sketches that I did in Gloves Off was a very dark piece about a woman who had grown up, actually. It was about the residential schools. And she had been impacted by that. This is the character that I had created, and she was very disturbed, and her manner of putting thoughts together was like shattered glass. And I felt it was an important piece to do, and I did it, and then I immediately followed it with something very light so that people could see that it was a kaleidoscope and not get too far down into a dark hole. And one of the fellows working on the show said, "I didn't like that character." And I said, "Do you think she liked herself? It wasn't her fault that she ended up that way." And he said, I think I liked you better as mom." And I said, "Well, how do you know that dark character isn't the real me and mom is a complete act? How do you know that mom, how are you so convinced that mom is so real?" And he said, "I don't know, I guess just because you played her well." And I said, "Okay, so interesting compliment." So all of this to say, Roger, who sees so much possibility in so many things and is so generous and creative with the people that he works with, he's so supportive. He had literally not seen me, and he felt terrible about it because he's capable of seeing. He's beyond capable of seeing. And Freddie says, "The dangers of being typecast." Well, exactly, Freddie. And that's the theme today, is that we all end up being typecast the longer we present one facet of ourselves to the world. And the big leap for all of us, the leap Roger took, bless him, the leap the crew took, the powers that be at the network, at the station took, to accept the idea that there might be a slightly different Abby worth looking at. Just accept the idea, not even buy into the whole thing, but just, well, what the hell? That just that much acceptance is what we all have to find in people and invite in people, so that we are allowed, we are welcome to show people all the different parts of us, so that the typecasting becomes versatile. You never know what you're going to get. It's always interesting. That's the typecast. You never know what you're going to get. It's always going to be beautiful. It's always going to be clever. It's always going to be creative. It's always going to be challenging. But you never know exactly how it's going to be presented. This is our opportunity. This is the purpose behind Pivotry in Motion. A collection of books that reminds people how versatile we are, how many skills we have, how powerful and interesting our personalities are, how impressive our ability to shift, flex, lean to avoid the lightning, to shape shift and present something entirely new and different that causes the utmost damned astonishment. We're all born with that ability. Every single one of us. We're born with it. And we never forget the characters. We may store them way back, and we have to be reminded of some visual or some verbal cue, or, if you spend days and weeks and months not remembering the feeling that washes over you when you aren't feeling well and you have that favorite soup, somebody makes your favorite soup, and you can have a blanket and you can sit there and you can have your favorite soup. If you haven't thought that memory in a long time, I guarantee you the first time you're sick and that soup is available, you smell it, instant memory, full-on memory. And the full-on memory is bigger than when I was sick, I had that soup and I felt great. It is that. What's bigger is you already anticipate feeling that way now. Oh, I'm going to feel amazing in a minute. That's the power that we have. That is how unique we are. And every single person, Freddie, for example, the first conversation, the first exchange we had, Freddie, you'll remember, you sent me a message and said, I think I might be a pivot master. And I said, well, then I guess we have to have a conversation and you can explain it to me. And then we got on the phone and you told me why you thought you might qualify. And I must have sat there looking like I'd turned to stone, because holy cow, what an incredible determination you have to keep putting one foot in front of the other and doing you, being you, in spite, because of, along with the challenge that you have. How you are determined to pull all the great good stuff out of every day, because you deserve it. You deserve all the great good stuff. And you don't move forward. You don't get any further forward or any closer to the great good stuff if you sit in a corner complaining about something that just is. I used to, it's just triggered a memory, actually, Freddie, me saying that to you. I used to have this frustrating conversation with my mother when she would, she suffered from cyclical depression, and she would stop taking her medication because when she took it, she felt fine. And so she would convince herself that she was better now. And then, of course, she wouldn't tell anybody. And she would gradually decline. And suddenly she was incapacitated. And we would have to hospitalize her. And it's heartbreaking. It's terrifying. And when she was better, when she'd had the doctors working with her and the medication and the time in the hospital to recover and whatever procedures they had to do, and I would say to her, I want to explain your medication to you in a way that might make sense. Neither one of my parents ever wore glasses. So I said to her, I wear glasses every day. And she said, I know, dear, and it's such a shame because you have such lovely eyes. Thank you, Mom. That's not the point. Thank you, but that's not the point. Do you know why I wear the glasses every day? And she said, well, because they help you see. Although I can't see why. And I said, okay, perfect. Let me interrupt you. They help me see. While I have them on, I have 20/20 vision. The minute I take them off, I have 2400 vision, which means that I have trouble seeing gray cars in the rain at dusk because I can't see them. And I said, so I must wear my glasses every day. I have cute glasses. I love these glasses. No frames. You can see my eyes. It's just you and me and my eyes. I said, that's you in the meds, Mom. You need to take the meds every day. Because if you feel better today, it doesn't mean you're better. It means you're better today on the meds. I'm perfect vision with the glasses. The glasses are part of the perfection. You need to take the meds. Oh, I know, dear. And then she wouldn't. She didn't believe me. She believed her story. So her memory of what her life was like before she was sick all the time, because over the years, the cyclical nature of her depression became more frequent. But when she was young, there were long instances between her bouts of it. And she would focus on that. She would focus on, if only you didn't have that nasty broken leg, we'd be able to go for a walk. She would project herself and her focus ahead and into a reality she wanted to live in. She wasn't prepared to do the work to get to that reality. And that eventually is what caused her to take her life. She wasn't prepared to believe that it is a process, that we have the gift and we are very quick about applying this gift to pivot and be and shape shift and become. We're very quick. It's still a process. And we need to learn the steps. We need, first of all, to learn that it's true. And this is part of the reason for the direction for these videos, is my giving you examples that allow you to see the probability that it's true. And the reason for the interview books is to allow you to meet other people just like you. Freddie Moore, I'm considering returning to the world of tutoring math to college students after a 20-year hiatus. I recently applied for the senior math tutor position at Kansas City, Kansas Community College. Genius. And I don't simply mean that your IQ scores are genius. Genius move. Good for you, Freddie. Good for you. People need your brilliance, and they need your compassion. and your understanding that we all bring stuff to the table that gets in the way of our learning and our living our full lives. Good for you. Well done. Every one of the stories in the book is of people like Freddie, only different, who said at some point, I'm doing this because that's not good enough. This deserves more. And I love that feeling I see in people. I love the way they sit taller, stand taller, and the tone in their voice changes when they're excited, when they've given themselves permission to believe in themselves. Roger got that tone in his voice when he chose to believe that I had more to offer than he had first realized. And when he chose to believe it, he really went to bat for me. He was amazing. He made it happen because he bought in 100%. He always does that. And we all do that when we are 100% us. When I was talking to Billy yesterday about some video stuff that we're going to do, we were talking about the way the kids were coached on the show and how remarkably different the kids were. And it was actually, there was a thread. Billy hosts a wonderful group page. You can't do it on television, official group page on Facebook. And there was this amazing conversational thread that went on. One of the fellows who had reached out to me to ask me if I would do a podcast with him at some point. And I said, sure. And I said, to get to know the work I've done on the show, you might want to look at the book Fame. So he got the book. And then he reached out and he said, oh my God, Abby, I thank you for you suggesting this, because this has given me a lot of the insights that I was going to be looking for in doing my research. You've saved me all the time and trouble. And he said, you've also answered a question for me that has really puzzled me my entire life, all the way through watching the show and today. And that is how different the kids were and how much I identified with them. And you've explained it to me. It's absolutely clear now, and I can't not see it. They were being themselves. They weren't play acting. They weren't pretending to be somebody. They were being real. And I identified with that real stuff. And so I commented on it. I said, yes, that was Roger's intention in giving children who watch television people to identify with who were real. Because if they're real, you're not going to live in a fantasy world trying to connect to them. You get to be the real you, becoming friends with another real kid. And our brilliant acting coach, Carol Hay, her finest hour, her best stroke, was teaching the kids how to always be confident enough in themselves to say, I want to do that, without second guessing. Oh, I wonder if I should try and be more like that, and I wish I could do that. No, she taught them, you're awesome. You be you. Don't get a swelled head. You're not awesomer than him. Be you. So now that we know who you are, let's do acting. And she had coaching classes and acting classes every week, all the time, putting them in situations. Let's say you had a stone in your shoe. How do you walk if you have a stone in your shoe? Imagine a stone in your shoe. She didn't say to them, pretend you're an old man with a stone in his shoe. She said, you, how do you? And so we would see Matthew, we would see Alistair, we would see Kevin or Lisa or Christine doing them in that artificial situation. When you have 10-year-old kids working in a television studio, it's like bringing them into an airplane hangar. It's huge. Ceiling goes up forever. There's lights, there's a grid, there's big things, there's cameras, there's people all over the place. And, right behind the wall of the kitchen, you can also see the wall of the classroom. So it's a surreal situation. Carol's coaching, Roger's scripting gave those children the confidence to just be themselves, no matter what. Now, what got in their way later was when they tried to audition for other more traditional kinds of shows where they wanted them to be an old person or an elephant. And the only thing they were really, really good at was being themselves. So that got in the way later. But that was if they were going on into show business. What has happened for them, all of them, is that every single one of those, I don't know, Billy, how many are there? 200 kids over the course of the show, all of whom know exactly who they are. All of them, every single one is good with it. They can watch themselves doing foolish things on television if they want to watch it on YouTube, or they have, the tapes from back in the day. And they know that they were recognized as talented. And they look at themselves and they know that it's because they were authentically themselves. They were real and they were true and they weren't making stuff up. Pivotry in Motion and reading these stories that I'm putting together is designed to achieve that effect, is designed to give all of you, anyone feeling uncertain, anyone feeling, my parents always said I was exactly like this person or that person. This process, this concept that popped out of the air and smacked me on the head back in February is designed to offer to everyone who chooses a way to own them and all the versions of them, and use that ownership, that pride of ownership, as a rudder, as an anchor, as a safe space to say, okay, I'm walking here, let's do this. And you won't have to be a mad extrovert who's willing to leap off bridges with a rope attached to their leg or put a parachute on their back and jump out of a perfectly good airplane. You can be shy. You can be an introvert. You can have obsessive compulsion. You can have any kinds of issues, any kinds of baggage, any kinds of stuff, because it works for everyone. When you know that who you are is awesome, then you can lean into anything. It doesn't mean totally fearless all the time, because that's, I'm not afraid of a lot of things. I am highly respectful of things that are dangerous. Want to jump out of a plane? No. Not even going to say thanks for asking? No. Everyone is awesome. Excuse me while I break out in song. Billy, if you break out in song and YouTube hears you, they'll mute me. Stop that. Every single opportunity I have to give people the map, the navigation tool, follow the steps, follow the breadcrumbs. You know what is the other end? The key, your key. It unlocks everything. It's your key. It unlocks your everything. How do I know? I didn't invent it, pivotry, but I've had I've had a great deal of practice at it. I think it's fair to say that I am a pivot master. In fact, it's written on my wristband. It says it right there. Pivot master, pivotry in motion, Story Me TV. It's all there in black and white. Every single thing we are going to do together as the days progress is create content that's amazing to watch, fun to be part of, different, intriguing, mischievous, informative, educational, thought-provoking, comforting. We're going to tell our stories. Story Me TV. Tell me your stories. And let's make a show. Let's make many shows. You can't have a show without content. Content is driven by story. Story is driven by people. And that's who we are. All I have to do is get you facing slightly differently to see your awesomeness. And then show you the techniques that make it possible to do it on purpose instead of by random accident. And then you have extraordinary power in your hands. And then it's amazing. It's amazing what we can do. Billy's going to make a joke again. I know he is. So what we have together are different skills that we bring. Many hands make light the work. The Viking longship was long so that we could put a lot of Vikings in it. That required a lot of oars because we needed all the Vikings to row. In order for Story Me TV to work, we all have to say, I'm ready for something new, something different. I'm ready for something slightly, I don't know, different shape, flavor, color, direction, technologies, platforms. I don't know. I want to have the same feel good that I've always had. I just want it different. And I heard my name. I was grabbing another coffee. It's all right, Bill. I'll see you later. So today's video is a celebration of many things. It is a celebration of discovery for anyone watching who has said to themselves, I never thought of that. That's a celebration. That's an aha. That's one of these. It is an opportunity to connect people who weren't otherwise connected. It is an opportunity to create a different tribe. And it's a tribe without borders. It is a tribe that connects because we're all human and because we all want to get where we're going and have the most fun doing it. I also, before I end, I want to tell you that this month was particularly alarming is too strong a word. Horrifying is too strong a word. But it was a whole bunch of what the hell? Because as soon as one thing seemed to fix itself, something else fell off the rails. Kind of like juggling eggs and discovering that one of them was raw. Only, oops, another one is raw. Another one is raw, and it just seemed to go on endlessly. And then all of a sudden, yesterday, everything started to correct itself. Everything started to correct itself. There's a half a dozen things not connected at all except through me. And all of them, all back up and down, around and around, falling over for a whole month. And then all of a sudden yesterday, ding, 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 and everything's fine. Everything's fine. And I'm standing there, going, are you sure? I don't know. I couldn't believe it. And then I thought, okay, whatever that was, putting it firmly in the past tense, whatever that was, it certainly has provided inspiration, triggers, and hooks and pushes and nudges. It certainly has made me step out of my comfort zone. It certainly has reminded me that we must remind ourselves that comfort is easy. Challenge doesn't have to be hard. As I always say, challenge is only hard if it wasn't our idea. Change is only difficult if it wasn't our plan. When we think of it, when it's ours to own, it's exciting. All right, I got this. We got this. Let's see. And if it doesn't work, we're saying, well, why not? We're owning it. We're on it. We're in it. That's what this whole month has reminded me, that I was letting things slide. I was hoping things would fix themselves, even though I know they don't. That was, I guess, the benefit to me this month. The things that were happening were signs. And I couldn't see them until I was right up close and said, oh, how long has that been there? And the reason I share these things is that I really think it's important that people understand it's not just them when they don't know what they're doing. It's not just you when you're thinking, oh my God. It's not just you. Everybody goes through it. The big hurdle, the big push, the big thing that I have worked on a long time, years and years and years, that I want to make available, and then you will choose whether or not to take advantage of it, is how to recognize the habit we have of shaming and blaming ourselves for things. How we use that as a delaying tactic, as a stalling tactic, to keep ourselves stuck where it's safe. Even if the comfort zone has become a discomfort zone, at least it's familiar. And it's not that bad if we go along that way without realizing we're coaxing ourselves into no action. And then you get these wake-up calls, the way I got all through the month of September. And wake up! And when you do, you think, oh, of course. What was I thinking? I said it yesterday, and it's going to be a refrain. It's going to be a thread that I remind people. When we're born, we don't have any stories. We come with a clean slate and a piece of chalk. We don't have any stories. We are taught our first stories. And then as we are more and more able to experience the world on our own, when we can stand up without falling over and walk and go outside and meet other people, we learn other stories. But those first stories that are told to us, that are taught to us, that are repeated for us, in the same way that the great and amazing things that happen to us shape who we are, Those stories that are told to us when we're very young, they shape who we are as well. It's my slogan from my publishing company. Our stories tell us who we are. They hold the key to our immortality. We are always known for it. We are always typecast for it. We are always branded for it. We are always set in it, unless we rewrite the story, unless we pick up the pen and say, I never liked that character. I never liked that quality. I'm going to fix it. I'm going to change it. The stories we were told are messages we're taught. They may not be true. We may be holding on to them because they're familiar. We may be hanging on to the feelings of shame and blame because they're familiar, and they must be true because look who told me. And the question is, what if they're not true? What if there's a different story, a better story, a positive story, and that's the one that's true? The woman I've followed the work of, Mandy Morris, she has 3 questions. When something is wrong and we're telling ourselves something is holding us back, is this true? This thing you're telling you, is this true? How do you know? Is it true, or does it need to be true to keep you stuck here? Are you holding on to it to prevent change? Are you giving yourself permission to be a victim? 3rd question. If it's not true, what does the truth look like? Don't you want to find out? Those are 3 really important questions. Our stories are everything. Take out a picture. Bump your shin again on that pointy table that your grandmother gave you. There's a story. Why aren't you getting rid of the table? Well, it was my grandmother's. Yeah, but you'll always have the memory of your grandmother. You don't have to keep barking your shin on it to remember your grandmother. Take a picture of your bruised knee, put it on the wall. You don't need the table. Change the shift of the story so that it doesn't hurt you, it doesn't hold you back, doesn't cause you to live a life of bitter disappointment. I think one of the best things today is Freddie sharing the plan to go back to tutoring. I think they need you. I think a lot of people need to hear from all of us. Your students, Freddie, don't simply need your math genius. They need the opportunity to realize the incredible knowledge you have to share with them. And they get to experience that relationship with you. That, I think, is icing, fizzler on top of the cake. And it's a wonderful story that you shared. I'll put it in the book, obviously. So that was it today. When you leave and head off doing all the things that you need to do, please do us a favor. Carry the possibility with you that there is so much more available for you. And it begins here. It begins with us. It begins with our stories and our videos and the other things we're going to do. And anytime you want to be part of the conversation and share or ask a question, That's what it's for. It's a tribe. And we're all sitting around having a conversation. So if you're new, if you just tuned in, if you caught me late, if you have questions, reach out. You know how it's done. By this time next week, actually by Tuesday next week, I have every confidence that Billy is going to teach me how to use a piece of software that allows me to be the more colorful. I don't think I ever thought I needed to be more colorful, but this rendering, this is not, I mean, it's how I look, but it's not how I look. So we want to fix that. And I have been told in a very slow, patient way, patient, long-suffering way, that he's going to walk me through it. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited by the opportunity to get more content of this nature into the books. They're starting to shape up beautifully. They really are. And I can't wait to show you. So I have obviously work to do and exciting things to learn. And so while I'm off doing that the next few days and over the weekend, what I wish for you is that you're okay. That, and I don't mean okay, I mean that you're okay. I wish that for you. I know that there's a lot of weird stuff in the news. Some of it is important to pay attention to. Some of it we need to take with a grain of salt and say to ourselves, they're not having a good day. I'll wait till they're feeling better, because that's toxic. So I guess I'm saying police your boundaries. Be aware. I didn't police my boundaries the other day and something weird happened and I corrected it. And the person who had made a mistake was horrified because they hadn't been policing theirs either. So we can have these conversations together. It's important because it gives us a clear sense of who we are. And that really matters. So be good to you. And always remember and never forget to hug your loved ones. They deserve it. Please tell your friends, all those loved ones, they need to subscribe. We're on a mission. We need a bigger tribe. Okay? See you next time. Thanks for watching.